I am Melisa Manrique Oyola. That's actually my full name, and I'm really happy to say it because where I come from, you take the surname of the father and the mother. And I come from Peru. I was born in Peru, Lima. I grew up actually in Italy. So when I was 5, my family migrated to Italy, and I was there since I was 5 until I was about 19. And right now, since the past 4.5 years, I live in Berlin. Peru was relatively dangerous in the 80s and the 90s. On a daily basis, there were things happening that was definitely not safe for grown-ups and for children, for anybody. But when I was in Peru, I was afraid to sleep alone in the flat, because I wasn't even afraid of somebody breaking in. I was actually afraid of the earthquakes. That's nothing that I experience here, so it's another type of unsafety. But it's still something that it belongs to the country. You just have earthquakes all the time, so that also doesn't make you feel safe. So my parents thought, particularly my father thought, okay, Spain is the most logical solution, is the easiest solution. The language is going to be a big help. But by that time there were already many Latin Americans that wanted to go to Spain, so there were some regulations as well in Spain. And to make the story short, in Italy there were not so many regulations yet. They didn't know at all what to do with migrants, so they were just letting them in. And my family ended up there. Mm-hmm. So after that, after Italy, I personally didn't want to go to Spain because I don't really have a connection with Spain and the Spanish culture. But I went first to London, and then after London, Berlin kind of seemed the logical next step to me. I'm a city girl eventually, even though I don't always like that. So I was looking for another big city. I think eventually I would have chosen another city. I like Berlin, many things of Berlin, but still I can see how the weather affects me, affects my mood and my energy. Very different from Peru, is very different from Rome when I grew up, and this also has a strong effect on people in general, on anybody. When it is so dark outside, when it is for a very long time really dark, and with the coldness it's fine, but it's just dark. So that affects also how people interact with each other. At the moment I work from here. When I first came to Berlin, I used to work also close by, actually, in a place that is called Factory Berlin, which is a startup campus for different freelancers or startups. So I emerged immediately into the startup scene. When I first arrived here, I was there for a couple of years. I think I was the only foreigner, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it could be. I think at the very beginning I was the only one. So at the beginning I also had to speak German. That was a very big challenge, definitely. Also because I didn't know, even if I could speak a bit of German, I didn't know lots of vocabulary that was specific for the job that I had to do. So I had to learn every day something new, which was of course positive, but it was really, really tiring. It's a completely different language, and I couldn't by the time take any language course because I was mainly living at the factory, so we were just going there in the morning and then leaving in the evening and then going back in the morning again. So there was so much to do that I couldn't really schedule to have some language courses, and I just started learning every day thanks to the other people that would very, very patiently also teach me some new words or try to explain me with other words if I would not understand. So I have to say, in general, many Germans, they're really, really patient. If you don't speak the language, and if you are trying to learn the language even more, they're happy about it. I have a German boyfriend, and he has lots of German friends. and I underlined lots because I think he didn't really realize before that he had mainly German friends. He thought that he was really international, but that wasn't the case. I mean, when we were, and there is nothing bad about it, but it's just the moment you realize something that is obvious for somebody else. So the moment we would just hang out with his friends, the language was German. So for the first years, I was just hanging out with them, having headache and saying maybe one word every hour, but then eventually was a good lesson. But today is still difficult sometimes. It is very difficult, even though you reach a certain level of German. When you can communicate with others, it's really difficult to show your character in another language. So your humor, for example, it's something really, it's something really hard to show with words of another language. I was missing something that I knew that wasn't the place for me. So I left Factory Berlin and started thinking, okay, what should I do? I also got lots of energy from the startup scene, so from all the people doing something that they were passionate about. So I thought, okay, that's a really nice energy that Berlin is giving. So I thought I will do something on my own as well, and I started working on a project that is called My Migrant Mama. It's a future company. We're going to found the company next year around March, so March 2019. That's the idea, and until then we're working on our first product. So we're doing a bit of a reverse thing. So we're working on the first product, which is a book. My Migrant Mama is much cooler than yours, where we celebrate how awesome migrant parents in general, with the focus on migrant moms, how awesome they are and how many struggles they have been through in new countries with new languages and so on. So I'm working on that. I met my co-author and co-founder. She's called Manik, and she was born actually here in Germany, so she's second generation migrant because her parents are from India originally. So we met in India because we were both there studying, and I remember that I just had a call with my mom, and my mom was again telling me how many hours she worked that day or something similar. So I was sharing then with Manik, my friend, you know, my mom did so many sacrifices and she did this and that. And she answered back, like, my mom is much cooler, and she did this and that, like there is no comparison. And I was like, no way, my mom. So we started battling about who had the coolest migrant mom, and by coolest meaning how many sacrifices they have been doing for us. And we thought it would be nice to hear other voices as well, other people like us, first generation, second generation, that also want to share and want to celebrate the awesomeness of their parents, and to celebrate the parents themselves too. Berlin really gives you the energy and the chances to start something you're passionate about. So I thought, okay, I need to use these chances, and at the moment, yes, I do like what I do. I'm really sometimes obsessed. When I first came here, we used to live in a WG, and I didn't know by the time what a WG meant. That's something that I learned here. I mainly joined the WG of my boyfriend by that time, and it was a 5-people WG, so 5 people were sharing this flat share. So it was a flat share, and after that, so we were mainly sharing a room with my boyfriend. So that was the very beginning. And of course, when you come here and when you have the support of already German friends and the German acquaintances, then you have far less problems. I was really lucky in that sense, because we first stayed together in this WG, and then afterwards we decided that we needed something for ourselves, that it wasn't necessarily one room. So we looked for a place And there was the suggestion of another person. So it's always the network eventually. So another person suggested, hey, I have this place, do you want to check it out? And we ended up being in this place. Now I am soon to become 32. And I think for a 30-year-old woman, this area is pretty charming because there are lots of restaurants and lots of bars, but it's not hardcore clubbing area, and I'm not anymore into clubbing hardcore. And before we were living in Friedrichshain, where there was actually completely another atmosphere, so it's really party, 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 party. I'm really lucky because I've never experienced how it would be to look for a flat just with my surname and with my, because it's a foreign surname, and I've heard sadly bad stories about it, or how it would be just as a foreigner, a single foreigner looking for a flat. I've heard some bad experiences, sadly. Funny thing about the neighbors is that when we moved here, even the first day they already started interacting with us, so they already knew we were the new ones, and they were very, very kind, all of them. And so we invited them over, actually here, and they found the idea very kind, because they most of them, they are Germans. I think there are a couple of other foreigners in the building too, but most of them, they are Germans, and they were mentioning to us, nobody invited us before. That's really nice that you open the doors of your flat, which is something that, for example, in Italy, you do, you know your neighbors. That's what you do. Me and my boyfriend, we were there in a very small village, and we were sitting in a restaurant, and the whole restaurant was just looking at me, because it was just, I have a different color, so they probably never really experienced somebody with a different color, which is normal. I don't want to call it discrimination. That might happen to other people too, if they go to Peru, to my country, and they have blue eyes and they're white skin, so everybody's just staring at them. So it was rather this feeling. I miss the family interaction. So there is far more family meetings, for example, in Peru. And your friends are actually your cousins. And you hang out with your cousins all the time, and you do stuff with them. And your uncles, they're not even only uncles, they're nearly like your parents. So there is a very strong sense of belonging and of community. And your family is not just your sisters and your parents. So that's something that when I experienced in Peru, that I missed afterwards, to know that, okay, my family is much bigger than what I thought. My cousins in Peru, they study in a German school, so they already know the language. So then the next step would just be coming here. And I've heard from, I don't have a first experience with that, but I've heard from the parents that it's not easy at all, even to send your child for a half a year here in Germany. It is not easy at all if you don't have the budget to do it. And also bureaucratic-wise, they cannot understand the language. That was interesting to see that it's still today, in 2018, it's still not easy for outsiders to move to Germany. It's not that easy.